Well, great. We just discussed for a few minutes all that big data, or more generally the flow of data, have been able to generate like hope, like new insights, but it is also coming with this load of challenges and key issues that without any doubt we will be able to overcome over time. But one of the first issues is looking at the life science world. Will the ability or not to leverage big data may have a significant impact on innovation in the future, both in the healthcare system, but also in R&D and life science organization? So perhaps...
Sure, yeah. I'll start with this one. So I think it'll be absolutely essential for companies to leverage big data in whatever way they do. It will be, if they do not, they will die. And so how they do it is going to be key. Now, whether they do it alone in a kind of competitive way or they do it together in a pre-competitive way, I think we'll have to see. There might be advantages and disadvantages in both those scenarios. But they will have to leverage, and they will not be able to do that on their own. They will have to do that in partnership, and I know some big pharma companies have already partnered with Google and Samsung and whoever, and they will need those partnerships in order to move forward in a cohesive and intelligent way.
Deepak, what would be your view from a healthcare perspective, for example?
Well, you used the word challenges, and I suppose I think we don't have time today to go into all of the challenges because there are so many, but there are a couple of the big headlines that we should at least put on the table are around privacy protection, especially when you're dealing with personal health data that then goes into an anonymized place for research use, and then the fact that we still have quite a lot to do to improve the interoperability between hospital, GP, research systems, registries, so that the data can really come together and be analysed at scale. So those are two big challenges. But the other one, and I think this really builds on your point about competition, not competition, is the race is not competitively to gain the insights from the data. The race competitively is to turn an insight into new organisational practices. Inside a competitive industry like pharma, how do they use knowledge from real-world big data to alter their drug production pipelines, their care pathway redesigns, etc. In a non-competitive place, usually healthcare organisations like hospitals want to use big data research to improve their care. And the successful hospitals will not be the ones who discover the facts from the data. It's the ones who turn that into improved organisational processes, improved clinical care, improved patient experiences. So really the tough challenge seems like it's about getting your hands on the data, but it isn't really. The big challenge is using the knowledge and insights to make a difference to how you behave, what colleagues of mine call actionable insights rather than just insights. And I think actually, to give you some credit, Pierre, in the IMI program, in my experience of working in some of your projects, what I have seen is that the industry from pharma, the pharma companies, are really very willing to work pre-competitively so that they can present a united, coherent, collaborative front to the stakeholders outside and work with them collectively to enable the data to become usable. And they know they'll only compete after they've done the analysis on what they do with the results. So I think it's a real strength of the IMI program.
So we are talking today and since the last few years about open collaboration, sharing the data, collaborative organization. Do you think that it will become more and more important for a life science company and looking at some specific disease, orphan disease, Alzheimer's disease, for example, to start sharing all the data or to work together on solving health issues, do you think it could accelerate the pace at which they can innovate? And do you think that if they don't do it by themselves, perhaps the healthcare organization could help them to accelerate and to move into this direction? Pierre.
Well, Philippe, this is a great question and very topical, because this is happening already, and you already cited Alzheimer's disease, and this is a perfect topic for this, because I think traditionally, of course, the companies have been very private in the way they've dealt with their data. But when they fail, and they have all failed in Alzheimer's disease, as you know, and they have spent a lot of money failing. And so now that is a huge incentive for them to collaborate and share their data, share their negative data, their negative clinical data, so that we can learn collectively from this and move. It'll still be a competition, but the competitive barrier will have moved downstream very much. And now there are companies, we have a big investment in Alzheimer's disease, as you know, over 250 million euro. And companies are very willing to, in that space, that they have designed themselves. They want to work with the best academic groups. They want the patients involved. They want the IT systems to be there in the same consortium. And so this is the trend. And they agreed to share their data. And they will benefit. And the field will benefit. And the patients will benefit. And they're, at the same time as doing that, they are sharing risk. Because nobody wants to spend another €1 billion on a clinical trial that's going to fail. So why don't we share that risk and learn from each other, bring in the creativity of our academic colleagues and the SMEs and all the people we need, and build an innovation platform that is really going to deliver what the field needs in order to progress. So that we talk about Alzheimer's a lot, but this is being now replicated in many diseases that are so-called market failures because we're kind of stuck, or we don't have a business model, like in antimicrobial resistance, and this is the trend, and big data is going to be part of that trend, and that's going to be shared, and we're much more in a field of collaborative. A collaborative ecosystem than a siloed ecosystem right now. And I don't see any reason for that trend to reverse. I can just see it progressing, being more productive, being more open, and pushing that competitive piece downstream.
Yeah. So, few challenges, but we just look at this one that could become a strong opportunity. Is there any other challenges that today you can see coming and that will be overcome by, I would say, the health ecosystem, life science companies, healthcare organization, insurance, patient? Dipak, is there anything that you can see coming?
Well, I think there's one more challenge that I maybe should have mentioned earlier, which is around data quality. I think that clinical documentation by health professionals has historically been an act of record keeping so that they can be reminded of what they did in the past. As we want to use the data for more and more purposes, we need more accurate data that's coded, structured, standardized. So I think what I see is an ecosystem change that as we start to value data more, we will create more incentives for health professionals to document better. We will invest in better IT, better user interfaces, so that they actually capture better data. But then we need to bring the patient, the citizen, into the equation. They are not only hungry to be more involved in their own healthcare and to have access to that data, they're capturing their own data. And they're doing it with wearables, with sensors, with PDAs and all sorts of tools. And I think that volume is set to go. The predictions are that this will become a massive growth area for data volumes. So that was an opportunity, not a challenge. But now here's the challenge. There'll be a very large volume of noise, a lot of negative findings, spurious findings in all of that. So how do we start to detect the signals that are pointing to a health issue, a health problem, or are giving us good insights about a population when there's so much data that is collected in random ways? There's a new scientific challenge here, there's a statistical challenge here, and then how do we combine that with professionally driven data, with pharma-collected data from trials, so we get even richer insights? So I think the challenge is how to make good use of it, but I think the opportunity is that data volume is really going to explode.
Yeah, absolutely. And on your side, Pierre, is there any...
So, I mean, I think Dipak, it's very interesting because the way Dipak describes from the health, clinical and healthcare side, we can absolutely replicate those on the R&D knowledge creation side, because the big challenges are, and it sounds like I'm repeating what Dipak says, but it's the quality of the data, because now some people are saying that 50% of the publications are flawed in some way. Right now, people say that that's how science works, because people publish a piece of data and then others, your peers, challenge that and say that can't be right, because so that means that quite a lot of it has some flaw. So the data quality, the integration of different data sets coming from genomics, proteomics, metabolomes, whatever, the integration of that at scale is absolutely key and is a huge challenge, remains a challenge. It's been a challenge for a while now, but it remains a challenge. And it really does sound as if I'm repeating what Dipak said, in terms of, okay, so how do we share genomics data across the world in different jurisdictions, in different institutions, from institution to institution, never mind from country to country. And so that remains another challenge that is being addressed, but we don't have the magic wand, and it's tricky because there are legal issues and ethical issues and so on and so forth. Who owns that data? At the same time, you have the patient voice that is becoming stronger and stronger, and some patients in some groups are saying, I don't care where my data goes. My interest is that I can potentially help myself if somebody uses my data to improve my health status, or for generations to come, I want to contribute. My data can be used for research purposes to do this or that. And so that whole dynamic of how, yes, we're setting up a legal structure to protect those patients and their data, but perhaps that's not exactly what the patient wants or what the individual wants. And let's not put so rigid frameworks in place so that they can't even have the choice to do something that they would like to do. So lots of challenges. I think they're quite well known. And once again, I think it's going to be a partnership and collaborative approach that will address some of these over the next decade or so.
Yeah, that's and the patient in that is we can say we can see that he's playing a bigger and bigger role as he's more and more educated himself, and he was educated by big organization, big technology organization. He learned to read his health care record, his health data, and there are some other organizations that today help them to understand a little bit of what their DNA is telling them. If I think to companies like 23andMe, they receive this information and then start thinking about what are my risks down the road. So it seems that, as you mentioned, Pierre, they are going to be central in dealing with their health and really
Absolutely.
to improve our health.
Absolutely. It's a really important shift that we're seeing. I mean, thanks really to education, thanks to the media, we are seeing our society being better informed about health issues, about diseases, about treatments. And once they can get their own data, and then they can take the knowledge they gain from the media and from reading and their personal story and their health record, they can start to make personal choices that are well informed. And I think that's a really exciting change.
And I think that in the as much for how people get treated, but also in prevention strategies, that
Yes,
people
that's a good point.
need to understand how their makeup is going to determine maybe their lifestyle choices to remain healthy. Because with the stress, the financial stress that health systems are under today in the developed world, there is no way we're going to be able to afford treatment in a personalized medicine paradigm if we don't keep most of the people healthy, or they keep themselves healthy, knowing a little bit about themselves and their susceptibility to disease. And that's going to be, I think, essential that we have that balance of prevention and treatment going forward.
Well, definitely, big data is changing the way we behave, and the patient is going to play a key role, not only the knowledgeable people, I would say.